Hey loves, welcome back to Day Spills Tea. I of course am the lovely Day, and I just wanted to give a really quick update on this Cardi B versus Tasha K trial, which resumed today. Now, court actually ended early today, and from what I understand, it's kind of related to the judge feeling like Tasha K's attorneys might be trying to force a mistrial. Might be a genius strategy, might not be, but what do I know? Before I go into the details and the recap that I received today, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Show me just a little bit of love. Make sure you leave some comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on what's going on. If you haven't subscribed already, take a second and do that. And if you have, thank you so much for coming back. That always means the world to me. Okay, let's jump into it. So we've been following Byron, who has been reporting on this, giving us a blow-by-blow, step-by-step from what's happening inside the courtroom. Today, he enlisted the help of employment and music attorney Brittny Dobbins, who actually practices in LA and in Atlanta. And she's been recognized as the National Black Top 40 under 40 for attorneys. So she's got some really nice credentials, and instead of Dennis giving us the play-by-play, Brittny stepped in and gave us the play-by-play. So one of the things that she said is that court actually had to end a little bit early today. So the reason for that is that Tasha K's attorneys, while Tasha K was on the stand, attempted to introduce some evidence that wasn't already on the pre-approved list. Now, if you've watched any court TV, and we all have, you've seen Law and Order or something throughout your life, you know that the attorneys can't just decide to bring in a new witness, can't just decide to just bring in new evidence and that sort of thing. So apparently there's a video that they wanted to show. I think we can all kind of guess what the video is. I'm assuming it's the video where Cardi admitted to doing some really ugly, nasty, disgusting things as far as, like, you know, men go. I'm gonna leave that at that because y'all ain't gonna catch me up. Anyways, so we're only speculating of what the video was. But apparently the judge said that the video was not admissible because it had previously been excluded from the list of evidence, from the list of exhibits that could be allowed. And so Tasha K's lawyers basically tried to say that it is a video that had previously been agreed upon, but they were instructed to break it down basically into segments and enter it as individual exhibits. So the judge gave them the opportunity to point to which exhibit it is. Like, tell me specifically exhibit number what this is relating to, or give me a very good reason why this should be entered into the evidence for the case. They weren't able to point to what specific evidence number or exhibit number it was. And instead what they said, what their argument was, according to Brittny, was that because previously when they agreed upon items to be entered into the evidence, the defense, meaning Tasha K's attorneys, didn't object to any of Cardi B's attorneys' requests. So in turn, Cardi B's attorneys shouldn't be objecting to their request. So apparently the judge was like, that's not how the law works. Anyway, so they were not able to apply that particular piece of evidence. And so court had to go ahead and adjourn early to give them the opportunity to get things situated and figure out what their next move is going to be. And why that's important is because apparently the judge also mentioned that he felt like he wasn't sure if Tasha K's attorneys understood that what they were trying to introduce as evidence, that video, was already not allowed to be admitted into the evidence. And if they did allow it to be admitted into the evidence, then Cardi B, if it's damaging to her, Cardi B's attorneys would either have to allow it to be played, which could be damaging to her case, or they would have to just go ahead and declare it a mistrial. Either way, if that were to happen, he would get to walk away scot-free, not necessarily having to pay a dime. At least that's the way I understand it. So court had to adjourn, didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of any of the real testimony for Tasha K today. But probably the bigger issue, though, is that The doctor who treated Cardi B, the psychologist, which is Dr. Sherry Blakes, she actually took the stand today, and she apparently painted a very, very colorful, saddening picture of what she observed having happened to Cardi B. So she testified that she began seeing Cardi B back in 2018 when Cardi B's management team reached out to her saying that they were witnessing Cardi B being lethargic, not motivated to work, wanting to like sleep all day, things like that. And like being sleepless and all of those types of things. And so she came in and did an assessment of Cardi B and tried to give her like some coping mechanisms and things like that. And apparently between the time she saw Cardi B in 2018 and then again in 2020, she says that Cardi's condition had actually declined and that Cardi had then become suicidal. So Tasha K's attorneys tried to object to her entering that statement, saying that when they were in summary, so before the trial actually began, that no one ever said that Cardi B was suicidal. But Cardi B's attorneys were able to refute that because they said that they had previously entered documents saying that there were risk assessments done on Cardi B. And generally speaking, a risk assessment is only done if the patient is suicidal. So they were able to kind of dead that, and Tasha K's attorneys didn't really make any leeway with that particular objection. Some other things that she said were, back to this picture that she painted, is she basically said that, so she's trying to paint a picture of emotional distress. And you know that we can't always see it. So it's great that Cardi's management team noticed that she was kind of lethargic and she seemed unmotivated and all those things. But you can't always really see that someone is in distress. So she gave the analogy of if someone were to rush into the courtroom and stab someone, everyone would see that person bleed and people would spring into action to try to address the situation, address the wound, stop the bleeding and all that. And so she likened that to Cardi B being stabbed, so to speak, or attacked by some of the defamatory statements that were made about her, saying that each one of those statements was like another stab. Only Cardi B is not bleeding in front of everybody in court. She would be bleeding internally. And as the psychologist, once you do the assessment, she was able to see that. So she basically painted a very clear picture of Cardi B like really, really being harmed, you know, by the statements and things that were made against her, which I think is pretty doggone huge. And I wasn't there, but when I heard the analogy, it definitely lit something in me, and it just made it a lot more real what Cardi may have been experiencing. So she said that at one point she was flown to meet Cardi in a hotel. When she got there, Cardi was laying across the bed and she was like very, very lethargic and all of those things. And she just said that it just really wasn't a good sight. She also testified that Cardi did not initially want to sue Tasha K. Okay. Basically, Dr. Sherry Blake said that Cardi was trying to handle everything on her own. She was trying to like take on the responsibility of getting Tasha to stop herself. And the psychologist actually recommended that Cardi put this mess in the hands of your legal team so that you can reduce the stress on you. So that's what Cardi did. And that's why we're here now. She gave it to her legal team. You stop trying to handle this. Cardi just wanted the defamation to stop. You know, the doctor says that Cardi actually did reach out to Tasha K on her own, basically trying to see if she could convince her, if she could relate to her and get her to stop the defamatory statements. And as we all know, Tasha K was still making videos about how she wasn't going to stop. So I can only imagine how that hit the jury. You know, so hearing Cardi's testimony last week and then hearing her psychologist paint this picture of her being stabbed and bleeding internally, and then also going on to talk about, you know, the fact that Cardi was not trying to even take this to court, and the doctor's like, I recommend it. I could only imagine what that did for the jury. What else? So then they did a cross-examination, and that's where Tasha K's attorneys got to question Dr. Sherry Blake, and that's when they tried to refute her, saying that Cardi B was suicidal. Cardi B's lawyers did that. Then Tasha K got on the stand, and according to Brittny Dobbins, her testimony was uneventful. That we really didn't get to the meat and potatoes of it, because apparently she kept fumbling like the microphone, and she was talking too fast, and so her attorneys and the court reporter had to ask her to stop and slow down a couple times. So it sounds like it was real kind of like messy and discombobulated. And then we also didn't get very much new information, because Cardi B's attorneys had to keep objecting, because apparently Tasha K's attorneys were leading the witness, meaning that they were asking her questions, but while asking the questions, they were suggesting what the answers were. And at one point she said the judge had to actually kind of stop and tell her attorneys that, like, leading the witness at this point is inconsequential. Like, you're still just trying to even lay your foundation. Like, what are you doing? The judge told them to stop doing that, and apparently they continued doing it, so much so that the judge again had to stop and address the jury and explain to them what was happening and explain to them what leading the witness was, so that they could make decisions appropriately. This is sounding so crazy. So according to Brittny Dobbins, like I said, who's also a great attorney herself, you know, she was saying that generally as the lawyer, you want to paint like this seamless story. So just, you know, she gave the analogy as to when you're watching TV, you don't want the commercial interruptions. Like, it messes with your focus, you know, it takes your attention away. It might make you lose interest and all those things. So with all the interruptions that Tasha K is having on the stand, it doesn't allow her attorneys to paint this seamless story, and instead it makes things kind of jumbled and garbled, and that's not necessarily going to work in her favor as the jurors are trying to listen and follow along with the story. So that's, again, just another thing that's just really, really not looking good for her. I don't know what's happening. Maybe they're really, really very strategic and they're trying to make this mistrial happen. Maybe they'll be successful, maybe they won't, but at this point it just really, really seems like she made a really poor decision in selecting these attorneys. But again, I don't really know nothing. Thank heavens I haven't had to be in nobody's court. So anyways, that's my update. I hope it was helpful to you. I don't know if y'all still interested in this story, but as an up and coming YouTuber, I most certainly am. So I will continue following it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.